Growing up in the age of the internet, I'm sure most of you have heard about the danger of meeting up with random strangers on the internet, especially when it comes to sites like Craigslist. Most people might scoff at this notion, thinking that things like that only happen in movies, or at the very least, it could never happen to them. But for the victims in today's video, this tragically became a reality. In today's case, we'll be going over the disturbing and horrifying story of Brad Oestrike, also known as the Craigslist Killer, and taking a look at the horrible crimes he was able to commit with minimal hiding and manipulation. Our story today starts in the town of Wyoming, Michigan, where Brady Oestrike was born in December of 1982 to parents Richard and Christine Oestrike, and was to be their only son out of 4 children. The family was incredibly religious, with Brady and his sisters frequently attending Bible school, such as Montana Wilderness School of the Bible, as well as taking mission trips down to Haiti with his family, where he would help build schools, hospitals, and homes in exchange for trying to convert the locals over to Christianity. Brady's childhood and teenage years were nothing of note, and in his early adulthood he became a lineman for a power company, being tasked with going and doing maintenance and repairs on power lines. All in all, very tame compared to some of the lives we've covered on this channel. Brady developed an intense fascination and love for the medieval era, frequently attending Renaissance fairs and collecting a variety of weapons such as real metal swords and crossbows. At a Bible school in 2002, while Brady was just stepping into adulthood at 20 years old, he met a woman from Saskatchewan with whom he soon entered a relationship. The woman would later describe the Brady she knew as her teddy bear, and the relationship was incredibly long-lasting as the two were engaged to be wed in 2013. However, at some point in 2013, the two mutually decided to break the relationship off. According to reports from the ex-fiancé, Brady was never aggressive, controlling, or violent towards her, and she said she found it incredibly hard to believe that the man she was once engaged to was the same man who would go on to commit the horrid crimes we're covering today. Fitting in with her story, friends and family who knew Brady described him as a gentle and kind person, who they wouldn't expect to be capable of violence. However, it seems as though the split from his fiancée may have had a deep and devastating effect on Brady's mental health, causing him to spiral into a dark depression. During this period, Brady kept journals and wrote poetry with quotes such as, "I know I'm crazy, therefore I'm not crazy. Isn't that crazy?" demonstrating the kind of thoughts he was having on a daily basis. One of his poems read, "Down a street that is lined with soft, whispering birch, on one side a slaughterhouse, on the other a church. For blood can mean death, or indeed can mean life, and a man can be more when he has a good wife." This disturbing poem may be the key to understanding the effect that losing his fiancée had on Brady, as well as shining a light on his motivations for the horrid crimes he was about to commit. In May of 2014, a woman put up a personal ad on Craigslist, searching for friendship, and heavily implied that she was also looking for a sexual exchange. For anyone unfamiliar, Craigslist is a popular website most frequently used for ads of all time, ranging from people selling items, events, services, or housing, and roommate options. While Craigslist is definitely a website that many poke fun at for being a hotbed of creeps, weirdos, and murderers, thousands of transactions happen on the website every day without issue. Looking to fill the hole left in his heart in the wake of his failed relationship, Brady began to frequent the website more and more often, eventually stumbling across the ad from this woman, who from here on out will be referred to as Jane, and the two soon began chatting. Jane mentioned that she was looking to move, and Brady quickly offered her a place to stay. Jane eagerly took up the offer, and Brady soon drove to her house to pick her up. But before the two left for Brady's home, he asked Jane if she wanted to get into a suitcase. Jane thought Brady was just being kinky and happily agreed to the strange proposition, unaware of the horrible agreement she was making. At some point on the way back, Brady pulled over the car, opened the trunk and the suitcase, and then sprayed in some sort of drug that made Jane incredibly groggy and agreeable. Once trapped inside Brady's house, he put a metal chain around her neck that kept her attached to the basement floor and kept her inside a cage. He then pulled out a gun and put it to her head, demanding that she become his sex slave, which she agreed to in order to save her life. The home had fallen into disarray, and Jane apparently spent days making it into a semi-livable space. Once during her capture, Jane begged Brady not to chain her up as she was sick. However, he not only denied her request, but also decided to shock her for nearly 30 seconds straight with a stun gun. After about a month of living in pure hell, Jane managed to make her escape and made it to a domestic violence shelter. However, this freedom would be short-lived, as Jane eventually met up with Brady for lunch and was sweet-talked into coming back to the house where she was once again chained and held captive. This treatment continued until the end of June, where she was once again able to escape and go to the police, where she told them all about her captivity as well as the horrible beatings and abuse she was being forced to live through every day. However, she chose not to press any charges. On the 2nd of July 2014, not too long after Brady's original victim had made her escape, an 18-year-old named Brooke Slocum posted an ad stating that she needed $50 and mentioned that she was 8 months pregnant. Brady soon found the ad and replied to it under a pseudonym. Brady had instantly taken an interest in the ad when he found it, as Brooke had a history of posting sex-for-money ads on Craigslist. However, this was tragically not of her own free will, but being forced by her boyfriend and father of her unborn child, Charles Openeer, who was pimping her out for cash. Brooke was the pinnacle of a good human being, doing what she could to provide for her soon-to-be-born baby, and donating money and food to homeless shelters even when she could barely afford to eat herself. The two made arrangements for Charles, Brooke, and Brady to all meet up at Gezin Park around 11:30 with the intent of having sex. Presumably, the three all met up at the desired time on July 12th, and not long after, Charles Openeer and Brooke Slocum were reported missing. The very next day, July 13th, a man called the cops to report that someone wearing a gray mask had been spotted peering into a car. The cops responded to the call and went to investigate the area around the car that would eventually be discovered to belong to Charles. On July 16th, just 3 days later, the cops discovered the headless body of Charles under some sticks near the park. While it was determined that Charles had been decapitated after his death, police were unable to recover Charles's head, and thus many questions regarding his death were left unanswered. The police eventually went to investigate Brooke and Charles' apartment, where they were able to find the conversation between them and Brady. However, the conversation had occurred with Brady using a pseudonym. Luckily, the police were able to track down his real name by tracing a collection of emails to a Facebook account that was connected to Brad Oestrike. The police applied for a search warrant on July 17th. However, while they waited for the warrant, they decided to set up a watch around Brady's house to see if they could spot Brooke being held captive. At some point during the day, Brady was able to deduce that police were watching his home, and that it wouldn't be long until they closed in on him. Looking to avoid jail time, Brady hopped into his car and sped off, soon finding himself in a high-speed car chase with police officials. Eventually, Brady crashed his car into a railing at an intersection, and when officers on the scene went to investigate the car, they found Brady dead at the wheel from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Upon further investigation, the police opened the trunk and found a suitcase that was discovered to be holding the deceased body of Brooke Slocum. It was deduced after an autopsy that Brooke had been kept in the house for a few days before being strangled to death, likely just a few hours before the police began staking out Brady's home. Despite best efforts, Brooke's unborn baby was unable to be saved. The police went to investigate further at Brady's home, where they were horrified to discover his methods of torture. The home was filled to the brim with guns, chains, ropes, swords, sex toys, and even a sex slave contract. Corroborating the story from his first victim, Brady's house was in absolute disarray, with clutter everywhere and cups filled with urine placed sporadically throughout the house. Police were able to discover disturbing footage from a variety of security cameras littered throughout the home, much of which included Brady setting up his torture area, such as him setting up the cage he kept his girls in. Much of this footage was released, and you can see him cleaning up and organizing the cage, preparing to go to meet up with Brooke and Charles, and even a night where he made Brooke say out loud that the two were only role-playing so that she could have a true abduction experience. A neighbor would later report that she heard screaming coming from the house over the few days that Brooke was held hostage, though she did not give a statement on why she didn't contact authorities. After going through Brady's computer, police discovered that on July 16th, the day before his death, Brady had made plans to fly to Las Vegas, Nevada, and meet up with a woman that he had met through a fetish website. However, likely knowing that the police had discovered Charles Openeer's body and were closing in on his trail, Brady decided to cancel the woman last minute. This woman later made a statement that it was only after the investigation that she Googled Brady's name and realized how close to death she had come. After this case having been solved and done with, it slowly left the public's mind and became merely a warning story to those meeting up with strangers from the internet. That was until March 24, 2019, when Charles Openeer's decapitated head was found on a random farm about 30 minutes away from the park the body was originally found at, sparking the public's interest and finally putting the final mystery in the case away for good. Let us know your thoughts about the case down in the comment section below, and be sure to tell us any other cases you want us to cover. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell to get notified whenever we upload a new video, and we'll see you in the next one.